Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank my colleague from Souris Moose Mountain for his thoughtful comments today and for sharing his time with me. Mr. Speaker, I want to focus my speech on a fundamental truth that is at the heart of this debate, and that is that living within one's means. Last year's throne speech highlighted our government's unwavering commitment to controlling spending while investing in Canadian priorities to safeguard our economy. Year after year and budget after budget, we have put in place credible plans to achieve financial sustainability and have set clear targets to bring our deficit down. These actions were crucial as we dealt with the damaging effects of the worldwide recession, one of the worst in more than 7 decades. We had to get our fiscal house in order to keep Canadians working and our economy strong. More than just managing debt, Mr. Speaker, our government is tackling spending. In the same way that Canadian families and businesses have to make tough choices about how to spend their hard-earned money, we're reducing the size and cost of government to ensure taxpayers get good value for the money. We're working hard to make government more efficient and responsive to the needs of Canadians. This is because our overarching goal is to create the conditions for jobs, economic growth, and prosperity for all Canadians. Our impressive track record in advancing this agenda has made Canadians the envy of the world. Since we introduced the Economic Action Plan to respond to the global recession, Canada has recovered more than all of the output and more than all the jobs lost during the recession. And real GDP is significantly above pre-recession levels, the best performance in the G7. This success has not gone unnoticed. In fact, in Bloomberg's recent 2013 ranking of best countries for doing business, Canada jumped from 6th to 2nd place, challenging Hong Kong for top position. This recognition reinforces the benefit of being good fiscal stewards. Reducing spending, lowering taxes, and paying down debt are enabling us to seize new economic opportunities as we promote free trade and innovation, the keys to job creation, economic growth, and prosperity. Mr. Speaker, I lay out these facts to underline that these same truths apply just as much to Canada Post as it faces unprecedented challenges. In the same way that our government had to make tough decisions and take decisive action to respond to the global economic downturn in 2008, Canada Post must also tighten its belt and develop new strategies for success as it copes with the detrimental impacts of the digital economy on its traditional business. The pace of postal decline has been accelerating here in Canada and in other developed countries for a number of years. However, it accelerated after the economic slowdown struck in 2008. Companies cut their mailing costs as part of their overall cost reductions, and many opted to shift more billing, statements, and marketing to an online solution. At the same time, individual consumers began moving en masse from traditional to digital communications. In fact, Canadians are now more likely to send and receive a text message or email than to write, post, or wait several days for delivery. This is especially true of the under 35 crowd, a population that is starting to move into their first homes and who are leading to a growth in the number of new addresses Canada Post must serve. Not surprisingly, rapidly declining mail volumes combined with the need to deliver mail to more households are causing serious financial challenges at the corporation. As other speakers have noted, mail volumes per address have dropped by nearly 25% between 2008 and 2012, and a further 6% decline is forecast in 2013. Mr. Speaker, you don't need a crystal ball to see where this trend is going. A 2013 report prepared by the Conference Board of Canada into the corporation's future projects that unless major changes are made, annual operating deficits will reach nearly $1 billion by 2020. Quite simply, the corporation's current business model no longer allows it to earn sufficient revenues to offset its costs. Without changes, the future viability of the Postal Service is clearly in question. Canada Post is not the only postal service in the world facing these challenges, nor is it the only one to come to a similar conclusion. The U.S. Postal Service, for example, has reduced service hours and the number of employees to address these financial pressures, while the UK's Postal Service has been privatized, which has led to a significant increase in stamp prices. Mr. Speaker, the digital economy is not going away. The corporation cannot turn back the clock and change the fact that fewer Canadians are using the mail system and visiting post offices. Canada Post has no option but to find new ways of doing business in order to keep its operations profitable. Like the people living in millions of households it delivers mail to, or just like any level of government that is accountable to taxpayers, Canada Post must manage its business prudently. Indeed, it has a mandate to operate on self-sustaining financial basis. A financial responsibility is a legislated obligation since 1981. Mr. Speaker, the services currently provided by Canada Post are clearly no longer affordable. The corporation needs to spend money within its means in the same way that individuals do as they manage their family budgets. More than that, change is essential at Canada Post if they are to keep pace with the choices Canadians are already making about the way they prefer to communicate. To meet this goal, the corporation is focusing on the best ways to reduce its expenditures. Since delivery accounts for about 40% of Canada Post's operating costs, it is the most obvious place to start. Door-to-door delivery is by far the most expensive mode of delivery. It costs between 2 and 3 times what it costs to deliver to community mailboxes. Compare $283 annually for home delivery versus $108 for community mailboxes. They're also cheaper than delivery to a rural mailbox, which ring in at $179 a year. To be clear, we're talking about changes affecting only home delivery. Businesses with large volumes of mail or located in business zones will generally retain their door-to-door delivery. However, the remaining one-third of Canadians who still have door-to-door service, the minority of people in this country, I would add, will gradually shift over the next 5 years to community mailboxes instead. Community mailboxes provide secure mail storage and convenient place close to home to receive parcels and packets. They will join the 10 million other Canadians who have been receiving their mail this way for decades. Remember that Canada Post introduced community mailboxes back in 1981, so they've been successfully delivering mail and packages this way for a very long time. Mr. Speaker, since labour is another significant component of Canada Post's rising costs, plans to return the corporation to financial self-sustainability have to address labour costs, including the sustainability of Canada Post's pension plan. The corporation expects to reduce its workforce between 6,000 and 8,000 positions by 2019. This will be achieved largely through attrition. Like most workplaces populated by baby boomers, a lot will leave the workforce in a few years' time. Nearly 15,000 employees are expected to retire or leave the company over the next 5 years. Another of the ways Canada Post is addressing its revenue shortfall is to increase the basic stamp price to $1. As others have explained today, there are ways to lower this cost by buying stamps in larger quantities. This will help to keep mail costs lower for small business. By taking these necessary and progressive steps, Canada Post will be able to remain productive and competitive into the future. Most important, they will enable Canada Post to become financially self-sufficient again, as it was for 16 years up until 2011. Mr. Speaker, while it is a Crown corporation that operates at arm's length from the government, solely responsible for its day-to-day operations, all Canadians have a stake in Canada Post's long-term welfare. Canada Post has put forward a plan that it's confident will return the corporation to financial self-sustainability by 2019. It is important this plan be implemented as quickly as possible and that these results are achieved. Canada Post must fulfill its mandate of operating on a self-sustaining financial basis in order to protect taxpayers while modernizing its business and aligning postal services with the choices of the Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. Question Carmichael, the honourable member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I find it most frustrating and disturbing to watch Conservative after Conservative get up today and try to rationalize or justify these cuts that are going to hurt the services that many Canadians have relied upon for generations and become the only developed country in the world not to have door-to-door service. This is the legacy of Conservatives. Now let's talk about the sustainability of a corporation that has been profitable 17 of the last 18 years, and over that time turned a net profit back to the Canadian taxpayer of $1.7 billion. What's unsustainable about this corporation exactly? And that the Conference Board study that Conservatives keep repeating is out by $300 million in its first year of estimate as to what was going to happen. And oh, by the way, the Conference Board to do this study was contracted by who? Oh, by Canada Post. Whose CEO sits on the board of the Conference Board of Canada? Conflict of interests all over the place. What isn't a conflict of interest is this, is that Canadians have come to rely on this service. Of course, mail delivery is down, but parcel delivery has more than picked up the pace. Changes need to be made to Canada Post. Let's innovate. Let's make the changes that allow Canadians to have the services that they need right across the country, rather than these draconian measures which this Conservative government supports. And the worry we have, Mr. Speaker, and I'll end with this, and I'll ask my colleagues specifically, is this sets up Canada Post into a Conservative ideology, into a Conservative movement that would allow for its privatization, that would allow it more and more to, and there's been no assurance from government today, not that we'd much believe a Conservative promise on privatization, but there's been no assurance that Canada Post isn't being made ready to sell from a government that is only interested in lowering expectations, lowering services to Canadians time and time again. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Don Valley West.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for his question. Mr. Speaker, Canada Post lost $195 million approximately in the last quarter alone. Technology, changes in methods of doing business, decline in mail volume. Yes, we've seen increase in parcel delivery, but it still only represents a third to a half of overall mail delivery, and it's in decline. Clearly, the management of the responsibility, the responsibility of the management is to, in fact, adapt the company to changing times and deliver on the promises of self-sustainability for which it's mandated. And to my colleague, I just encourage him, this is they've given us a five-step program. The five-step program clearly should achieve all of the required objectives, and we will once again by 2019 have an organization that is self-sustainable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. Question Carmichael, the honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Speaker, I want to pick up on the operational side that has been made reference to by a number of the Conservatives in terms of as a cost-saving measure that we have to do these types of things. It's not the first time in which the Conservatives have used the idea of financial crisis to provide or encourage certain directions. And the direction that we're seeing today in regards to Canada Post has caused a great deal of Canadians to be very fearful and very suspicious of what the true motivations are with this government towards Canada Post. There is a fear factor out there related to the privatization of Canada Post. And who can blame the postal workers for seeing and understanding or in appreciating that that is a real factor? Mr. Speaker, my question to the member is that why is it when they talk about operational costs, I posed the question to the minister responsible for Canada Post in terms of what is the cost of just the upper end of management, the president, the group presidents, the senior vice presidents, the vice presidents, just that group alone, some 21, 22 people. What does it cost for those individuals that run Canada Post?
For Don Valley West, you have 45 seconds.
Well, Mr. Speaker, clearly, the management are responsible to ensure that they deliver on the promise of managing a corporation, a Crown corporation, to self-sustainability. That point has been made throughout the day without exception. The honourable member addresses how many top executives, etc. Every corporation has executives who are responsible to do a job and do it every day when they come to work, just as we come to work in this place. We're accountable to somebody to get the job done, and clearly the management of the corporation are responsible for providing this format, these 5 action plans that will deliver the results. And I understand for the member of the third party, the change is difficult. And I just encourage them, have a look at these plans, review them. This is the change that's necessary in a digital economy to getting the job done, and I applaud the executive of Canada Post in delivering an action plan that will deliver sustainable results.